Human saved the alien girl from drowning. Her first breath accused him of a sacred violation. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The storm rolled across the open water like a living wall, its electric veins flashing through sheets of rain that hammered against Elias Grant's small survey vessel. The air tasted metallic, heavy with ozone, and every gauge on his console flickered in protest. The hull groaned, a low trembling sound that vibrated up through his boots. Elias wiped the water from his eyes, though it made little difference. Everything around him had become a blur of wind, sea spray, and flashing light. He leaned into the controls, muscles tight, voice low in his throat as he tried to steady the engine's wavering hum. The storm wasn't supposed to hit this fast. Not here. Not today. A surge pitched the bow upward before dropping it hard, and his breath caught as something bright and blue streaked across his peripheral vision. At first he thought it was debris from his equipment, until it moved against the current. A figure. Someone fighting the waves. His heart kicked hard. Without thinking, he grabbed the emergency float harness and lunged to the railing. Another flash of lightning cracked open the sky, and for a split second he saw her clearly, a girl, maybe in her early 20s, skin a deep ocean blue, drifting under the surface as if the sea were pulling her down. Elias didn't hesitate. The wind tore the breath from his mouth as he dove, the water slamming into him with an icy shock that cut straight through his suit. Pressure closed around his ribs, but he pushed downward, sweeping through the thick dark until he caught sight of her again. Her hair drifted like pale silk in the current, her eyes closed, her body weightless. He hooked one arm under her shoulders and kicked upward, lungs burning, ears ringing as the ocean tightened around him. Breaking the surface felt like breaking through a second storm. Rain hammered his face, and he gasped for air while keeping her head above water. The harness beeped as it activated, inflating around them with a soft hiss. "Stay with me," he muttered, though she was silent, her skin cold against his. He hauled her toward the tilted deck of his vessel, pushing through each wave until he could drag both their bodies over the rail. The wind roared, the deck slicked beneath him, but he focused only on her still chest. No motion. No breath. He pressed his hands lightly to her sternum, careful and steady, counting quietly, giving gentle breaths the way every water rescue protocol instructed. Her lips parted, releasing a faint shimmer of water the color of pale turquoise. Then her eyes snapped open, golden, bright, startled, and she inhaled sharply, not in relief but in shock. Her voice came out raw, trembling, carried by the wind. "Human, you touched my breath seal. You weren't allowed. That act is forbidden." Elias froze, the storm raging around them, realizing he had saved her life, and somehow broken a sacred rule he never knew existed. For a moment Elias thought the wind had misheard her, but the look in her golden eyes held no confusion. She pulled in another trembling breath, clutching the edge of his deck with fingers that shook as if the air itself were unfamiliar. The rain softened now, no longer a barrage but a steady patter that traced cold lines down her cheeks. Elias steadied himself on one knee, feeling the vessel tilt gently beneath them. "I was trying to help," he said quietly, the words nearly swallowed by the weather. "You were sinking." She blinked, the rhythm of her breath uneven as if trying to learn it again. Her voice was softer this time, though the tension remained. "Among my people, the breath seal is sacred. It is the final boundary between life and the deep. Only a bonded guardian or a chosen elder may cross it." Elias absorbed that, watching steam rise faintly from her skin as her body warmed. He kept his hands still, giving her space, conscious of every inch between them. "I did not know," he said. "I thought you were in danger. Anyone would have done the same." She studied him as though the claim was more shocking than the storm. Her gaze drifted over his soaked jacket. The salt water still dripping from his hair, the slight tremor in his arm from hauling both of them aboard. Something in her expression softened, though she masked it quickly, shifting her weight with caution. The deck rocked gently as the last of the storm rolled past. The clouds thinned, revealing a pale golden glow along the horizon. Elias moved to check the stabilizer bracket, its indicator light flickering amber. The whole vessel hummed with the low, uneven sound of a machine that had been pushed too far. "You should rest," he said gently. "Your body took in a lot of water." She hesitated, her fingers pressing lightly to her chest as if feeling the echo of that first breath. "My name is Sally Run," she said finally, the syllables soft and musical even through her exhaustion. "If what you said is true, if you acted without intent, then I may have judged too quickly." Elias nodded, keeping his voice calm. "Elias Grant." The storm-swollen water lapped against the hull, steady and rhythmic. Sally shifted again, trying to sit upright, but her limbs wavered with the lingering weakness of the near drowning. Elias offered his hand without pushing it toward her, just letting it hover in her line of sight. She looked at it for several long seconds, the meaning of the gesture not lost. Her eyes closed briefly in thought, then she placed her palm lightly against his, relying on the contact only long enough to steady herself. Her skin was cool but warming fast. "Your world's storms are fierce," she murmured. "The ocean below mine is colder," he replied. "But people are the same everywhere. No one deserves to be left alone in the water." Sally's gaze lifted to his, searching for something she had not yet learned to name. The wind quieted around them, leaving only the hum of the engine and the soft beat of waves against steel. And in that small, trembling silence, the distance between their worlds narrowed just enough for her to breathe without fear. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the cool taste of salt and electricity as Elias guided his vessel toward calmer water. The sky opened just enough for a muted beam of late afternoon light to spill across the deck, catching the faint shimmer on Sally Run's skin. She sat with her back against the railing, posture steadying little by little, her hands resting in her lap as if relearning the rhythm of stillness. Elias adjusted a dial on the control panel, listening to the stabilizers hum back to life in small uneven pulses. He could feel her eyes on him, not in suspicion this time, but in a quiet study, as though she was trying to understand the person who had pulled her out of the sea. He kept his movements calm and deliberate, aware that every sound and shift might still register sharply for someone recovering from near drowning. When he stepped away from the console, Sally spoke first. "Your vessel, it holds together even when the sky collapses. Is that common for humans?" Her voice was soft, curious, carrying less of the guarded edge he had heard earlier. Elias smiled faintly. "Not common. Just stubborn. It matches its owner." A small breath left her, not quite a laugh, but close. She turned her gaze toward the horizon where the golden light touched the waves with a warm sheen. "In my home waters, storms do not strike without warning. The ocean sings before it rises. The deep currents shift. The lights change color." Her hand moved slightly in the air as if painting those memories. "But here, everything moves faster." Elias leaned against the rail a few feet away, giving her space while keeping an eye on her breathing. "Weather here does not always give you a chance to prepare," he said. "Sometimes you just respond. You do what you can in the moment." Sally looked at him then, truly looked, her golden eyes reflecting the water below. "That is what confused me," she murmured. "Where I come from, no one crosses a ritual boundary without certainty. Without intention. Yet you acted without either." Elias shrugged lightly. "You were in danger. That was the only thing that mattered." She considered that for a long stretch of quiet. The gentle rocking of the boat eased into a comfortable rhythm, and the warm glow of the sun softened the lingering tension in her shoulders. Her fingers brushed absently along the railing, feeling the cool metal as though grounding herself. "When I was beneath the surface," she said slowly, "I remember the cold. The pressure. Then everything dimmed. I thought the deep had claimed me. But there was something else. A warmth. A pull. It startled me." Elias kept his voice gentle. "That was the harness. It deploys when someone is in distress." Sally shook her head faintly. "No. Before that. Something like, a will refusing to let me sink." Her gaze drifted toward him again, thoughtful, searching. Elias did not reply right away. There was nothing he needed to add. The silence between them grew easier, no longer sharp with misunderstanding. The water around the vessel glimmered in soft waves, the storm's memory fading into a distant hush. Sally rested her head lightly against the railing, her breathing steady and even now, each inhale smoother than the last. "Elias Grant," she said quietly, Your people are difficult to understand. He smiled at that, a quiet warmth behind the expression. We get that a lot. And as the sun dipped lower, painting the sea in amber and soft rose, Sally closed her eyes briefly, letting the calm settle around them, no longer afraid of the air she breathed. It was not until the sun lowered into a warm orange band along the horizon that Elias noticed the chill creeping back into the air. The vessel rocked gently, steady now, but the storm had left everything drenched and coated with a thin layer of salt. He reached for a thermal blanket stored beneath the bench and approached Sally with slow, open movements, careful to respect the small rituals of distance she seemed to hold close. She watched him place the blanket beside her rather than over her, a small gesture he offered without explanation. She drew it around herself after a moment, the fabric catching faint glimmers from her ocean blue skin as if it borrowed the last light of the day. Your world cools quickly, she said, adjusting the blanket. Her voice was steadier now, touched with curiosity rather than uncertainty. Ours stays warm long into the night. The deep currents carry heat from caves below. Elias leaned on the railing nearby, elbows resting against the cool metal. I grew up near colder waters, he said. My father used to say the sea keeps what it wants unless you respect it. Maybe that is true everywhere. Sally looked downward, her fingers tracing the ridged pattern along the vessel's railing. Respect, she repeated softly. Among my people, it means knowing your place within the ocean's memory. It remembers everything. Even our mistakes. Elias listened quietly, letting the hum of the stabilizers fill the comfortable gaps between words. The sun dipped lower, and the sky bloomed in soft shades of lavender and gold. Sally shifted slightly, her posture less guarded than before. When you pulled me from the water, she said, there was a moment. I heard something. A sound that did not belong to the deep. Elias raised an eyebrow. What kind of sound? She closed her eyes briefly, as if listening again to the echo of it. It was like a hum, low and steady. Familiar and unfamiliar at once. I thought it was the deep calling me home. But now I believe it was your voice. Elias blinked, caught off guard. I did not say much. Just told you to stay with me. Yes, she said, opening her eyes again. That. It reached me when nothing else did. She looked toward the horizon, the blanket gathered close to her shoulders. In my culture, a guardian speaks to guide someone back from the deep. Their voice becomes a thread. I thought I had imagined it. I did not understand how a human voice could feel safe. Elias kept his gaze on the water, the reflection of light moving in slow patterns. Anyone would have called out, he said gently. I just needed you to keep breathing. Her golden eyes lifted toward him, warmer than before. You speak as if it were simple. But I know now it was not. The vessel creaked softly as a gentle swell rolled beneath them. Elias adjusted a valve near the engine panel, watching steam curl upward then fade into the cooling air. Sally's gaze followed his hands with quiet interest. You repair everything, she said. Machine, vessel, even fear. Elias smiled a little. I am just doing what I know how to do. A soft calm settled between them, deeper than silence, shaped by shared uncertainty and the quiet recognition that neither of them entirely understood the other, yet something fragile was beginning to bridge that gap. The sun finally touched the edge of the water, glowing like a slow-setting ember, and Sally drew in a long, measured breath that no longer trembled. Elias Grant, she said, her voice a soft echo of the dimming light, if you had not found me today, the deep would have taken me. I am beginning to understand that your world's chaos may have saved me. And as the last light faded, leaving only the hum of the vessel and the gentle rhythm of the sea, Elias felt the quiet shift in her tone, something loosening, something trusting, like the first calm tide after a long storm. Night settled slowly over the open water, stretching into a soft indigo that blended the horizon and the sky until they became a single calm line. Elias activated a low-intensity deck light, just enough to cast a gentle glow over the vessel. It illuminated the metallic curves around them and formed a warm circle that pushed back the last traces of the storm. Sally sat wrapped in the thermal blanket, her posture more relaxed now, her breathing steady and even. The golden hue of her eyes shifted with each quiet pulse of the deck light, catching reflections from the water below as if her gaze carried its own tide. Elias checked the engine readings again, listening to the familiar rhythm. The hum had steadied, a soft mechanical heartbeat. We should make it back before midnight, he said, keeping his tone light. The weather forecast shows clear skies. Saley tilted her head slightly. Your world predicts the sky. Ours listens to it. Elias smiled. Humans do not always listen well. So we measure. We build tools to make up for what we cannot hear. She considered that, drawing her blanket closer. It is strange, she said softly. You see with eyes, you listen with instruments, yet you sense the deep taking me before it did. Elias shrugged gently. I saw someone in trouble. Instinct, I guess. Saley's gaze lingered on him, curious and steady. Instinct, she echoed. In my culture, instinct is trusted only after training and ritual. But you act on it freely. It guided you without hesitation. Elias leaned against the railing, feeling the cool metal press lightly against his palms. Maybe humans rely on instinct because we rarely have time to prepare, he said. We just make choices in the moment. Sometimes they work. Sometimes they do not. The vessel drifted into a stretch of calmer water, the surface smoothing into a glass-like sheen that mirrored the stars beginning to appear overhead. Saley looked up, her expression softening at the sight. Your sky is different, she murmured. The stars move in ways I do not recognize. It feels like looking at someone else's memories. Elias followed her gaze. I used to come out here when I was a kid, he said. I liked how quiet it felt. Like the world paused long enough for you to breathe. Saley breathed in slowly, tasting the cool air as if testing its honesty. I did not expect your world to be gentle. It is not always, Elias admitted. But it tries. She studied him again, her voice turning thoughtful. Earlier, when the sun fell, you placed the blanket beside me without assuming I needed your help. You let me choose. Elias nodded. Everyone deserves that. Saley looked down at the blanket, her fingers smoothing its edge. Among my people, a choice offered freely is considered a gesture of respect. It says, I see you as your own. Her voice grew quieter, almost reflective. No human has ever shown me that. Elias did not reply, but the shift in her tone made something warm settle in his chest. The engine hummed again, steady and reassuring. Saley leaned her shoulder against the railing, just enough for the metal to support her relaxed weight. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing the night air without hesitation, no longer treating it as something foreign. Elias Grant, she said softly, eyes still closed, your world may not sing like mine, but tonight, it feels safe. And in the circle of warm deck light, with the sea calm and the stars opening above them, Elias felt the truth of her words settle into the quiet, steady space they now shared. The night deepened into a quiet so complete that even the soft hum of the engine felt like part of the darkness itself. Elias kept the vessel on a steady course, watching the faint shoreline lights miles ahead flicker like distant fireflies. Saley remained near the railing, wrapped in the thermal blanket, her gaze shifting between the stars and the gently rolling water below. Something in her posture had changed since earlier. Her shoulders no longer carried the rigid tension of someone waiting for danger. Instead, she held herself with the calm awareness of someone trying to understand a world that did not match the rules she had always known. Elias, she said softly, her voice nearly blending with the hush of the waves, I have been thinking about your earlier words. You said you acted on instinct. That it was the only thing that mattered. Elias glanced over. From the console, keeping one hand on the stabilizer dial. Yes, he said. In emergencies, instinct has saved more lives than hesitation ever has. She turned toward him, golden eyes reflecting the faint deck light. In my people's teachings, instinct alone is considered unreliable. The deep tests us. It misleads, it manipulates, it tempts. Elias raised an eyebrow. Tempts you how? Saley's tone grew thoughtful. The deep wants devotion. It calls us to follow emotions without thought, to trust desire over discipline. That is why our rituals exist. To teach us which voices to follow and which to silence. Elias nodded slowly. Humans do not silence much. Our emotions are messy. But they help us care, and caring helps us act. She considered that, her gaze drifting back toward the endless water. Perhaps that is why you reached me. You did not wait for permission. You did not consult ritual. You simply cared enough to move. A small smile touched his lips. Sometimes that is all it takes. A quiet pause stretched between them, filled only by the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. Sally then lowered her head in a moment of reflective silence. There is something else, she said. When you touched my breath seal, in my culture, it is forbidden because it binds two lives in a way that is not easily undone. Elias straightened, careful to keep his expression neutral. I did not mean to cross any boundary. I would never try to claim anything from you. Sally's eyes softened. I know that now. You acted without intent, without expectation. That is why the deep allows me to breathe without fear tonight. She shifted slightly, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. But understand this, Elias Grant. Where I come from, breath is more than air. It is memory, story, and lineage. When someone offers their breath to another, even without knowing the meaning, it creates a thread. Elias's voice lowered, gentle. If a thread exists, I did not create it to bind you. I created it to save you. Her expression changed again, touched by something fragile. And yet, it exists. That is the part one am trying to understand. A soft breeze moved across the deck, carrying the faint scent of salt and cooling metal. Sally looked up at the sky once more. My people fear humans, she said. We are told you take what you want. That you force your presence into places it does not belong. But tonight, you gave space. You offered choices. You acted with care, not claim. Elias exhaled slowly. We are not perfect. But most of us try to do right when it counts. Sally turned fully toward him, her golden eyes steady in the quiet light. Then perhaps our teachings are missing something. Perhaps humanity understands a kind of respect that does not require ritual. The shoreline lights grew a little brighter ahead, marking the slow approach toward land. But on the deck, with the stars above and the water whispering its calm below, Sally drew in another controlled, even breath, one she chose freely, and for the first time since the storm, the thread between them did not feel frightening to her at all. The shoreline lights had grown brighter, scattered like small lanterns across the dark curve of the coast, when the vessel gave a subtle jolt beneath Elias's hands. It was not harsh, just a quick shift in weight that made the deck tilt half an inch. Elias steadied the wheel instinctively, scanning the gauges. The engine hummed steady. Fuel levels were fine. Stabilizers responsive. But the sensors flickered for a brief moment, a ripple of interference crossing the display. Elias narrowed his eyes. That is odd, he murmured. Sally, who had been watching the shoreline with a calm curiosity, turned her head. What is happening? Elias tapped the side monitor gently, listening to the faint static. I am not sure. The water depth readings just jumped for a second. Could be leftover turbulence from the storm. He tried to keep his tone even, but Sally's senses were sharper than most. She felt the shift before he said anything, her posture straightening beneath the thermal blanket. The deep moved, she whispered. Elias blinked. Moved. Her golden eyes focused on the water, her expression sharpening in a way he had not yet seen outside of fear. The deep does not move without reason. A subtle vibration passed under the hull, almost like a sigh from the ocean floor. Elias adjusted the engine output. Probably just a current, he said, though even he could hear the uncertainty slipping into his voice. The deck light flickered once. Only once. Then stabilized. But Sally inhaled slowly, her breath steady but deeper than before. Elias Grant, she said, there is something. You must understand. When someone is taken by the deep and returned, it does not let go easily. Elias leaned forward slightly. Sally, is something following you? The breeze shifted, carrying a faint scent that did not belong to the open ocean, something mineral and old. Sally's fingers tightened lightly on the railing. Not following, she said. Watching. Elias checked the sensors again. The interference returned, brief, soft, like the tail of a weak signal brushing past. He tried to keep calm for her sake. If something is out there, we will handle it. You are safe here. Her gaze softened at his words but did not lose its caution. Safety is not always a matter of distance, she said. Sometimes it is a matter of intention. Her golden eyes met his directly. The deep may believe you claimed me. It may be seeking acknowledgement. Elias exhaled slowly. I did not claim anything. I did what anyone should do. But you crossed a threshold, Sally said gently. And thresholds do not uncross themselves. A slow hum rose beneath them again, calmer this time, almost melodic. Sally lifted her head slightly, listening. It is calling, she whispered. Not to take me. To understand. Elias kept his hand steady on the controls. Understand what? Sally turned toward him, her expression carrying something fragile yet resolute. Why a human would risk his own breath for mine. Her voice lowered. It does not understand mercy without bond. Elias absorbed that, choosing his next words with care. Then we show it, he said softly. You are your own person. I did not save you to claim you. I saved you because no one deserves to be lost. Sally's breath caught in her chest, not from fear but from something that reached deeper. Something that felt like truth. The hum beneath the vessel slowly faded, the water settling again into gentle patterns. Sally placed her hand lightly over her heart, as if feeling for the thread she had spoken of. Elias Grant, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, you may have just spoken a language the deep has never heard. And in the quiet that followed, the ocean around them listened. The hum beneath the vessel faded into the kind of stillness that felt almost intentional, as if the ocean itself had retreated to listen. Elias kept the vessel pointed toward the faint line of the coast, but his attention drifted to Sally, who stood with one hand on the railing, her posture alert yet calm, her golden eyes reflecting the soft deck light like small lanterns. The thermal blanket wrapped around her shoulders fluttered gently in the breeze, and the faint shimmer of her ocean blue skin caught the light in a way that made her seem almost part of the water she feared returning to. Sally, Elias said quietly, if the deep is trying to understand something, what does it want from us? She inhaled slowly, her breath steady and deliberate. Not from us, she said. From you. Elias frowned slightly. Me. She nodded. Humans do not belong to the deep. It does not know how to interpret human intentions. When you crossed the boundary to save me, you created an action without a ritual. To the deep, that is, unprecedented. Elias rested a hand on the console, absorbing her words without letting worry show. I did not mean to disrupt anything. Sally shook her head softly. You did not disrupt. You deviated. That is different. A faint shimmer of light rippled across the water, not from the vessel, but from beneath the surface, as if a soft pulse traveled through the depths. Elias leaned slightly forward. Is that it? Sally's expression tightened for a moment in concentration. Yes, she whispered. It is searching. But not for me. She turned to face him fully, her expression a mix of awe and something more fragile. It is searching for the meaning behind your choice. Elias exhaled, the sound carried away by the breeze. I did not think saving someone needed meaning beyond the action. Sally stepped closer, not out of fear but clarity. To us, breath is identity. To the deep, breath is promise. Your intervention gave me breath when the deep had already decided otherwise. That is not something it understands. Elias watched the gentle movements of the water. So how does it learn? Sally studied him, her gaze softening with something he had only glimpsed in brief moments. Through intention, she said. Through truth. Through the thread we spoke of. It does not want to take or punish. It wants to know if your action was a binding. Elias shook his head. I did not save you to bind you. You know that. I do, she said gently. But the deep does not. Another pulse shimmered beneath the surface, closer this time, but soft, almost reverent. Sally closed her eyes briefly. It is listening for your truth. It is waiting. Elias glanced toward the water, then back at her. What do I do? Sally's voice lowered to a quiet calm. You must speak the truth aloud. Not to me. To the deep. Elias hesitated, feeling a strange weight settle in the air around them, not threatening but expectant. He stepped toward the railing, the metal warm under his hands, and let the sound of the waves guide his breath. Sally watched him with steady eyes, a quiet trust woven into her expression. Elias let his words flow, simple and honest. I saved her because she was drowning. I saved her because every life deserves a chance. I did not claim her. I do not own her. She is free. The water remained still for a long moment. Then, without warning, the light beneath the surface dimmed gently, like a lantern being lowered into calm hands. Sally's breath eased out in a slow exhale. It heard you, she whispered. And it understands. Elias released the railing, turning to her. Is that enough? Sally stepped closer, her voice warm and steady. For the deep, yes. Her golden eyes lifted to meet his. Now it is my turn to understand what you have done. The ocean around them mirrored the quiet shift between them, calm and open, like a world that had finally accepted an answer it never expected to receive. The ocean settled into a quiet so complete that even the smallest sounds felt amplified, the soft creak of the railing, the faint hum of the engine, the gentle rhythm of waves brushing against the hull. The shore was closer now, a thin silver line stretching across the horizon, but neither Elias nor Sally moved toward final preparations. The moment held them still, suspended between two worlds, the air warm with a calm that felt almost delicate. Sally stood near the railing, her ocean blue skin catching the low deck light in muted glimmers, her golden eyes softer than he had ever seen them. She looked down at the water, then at Elias, her voice a quiet thread. The deep understands now. But I do not think it expected your truth to be so simple. Elias rested his hand lightly against the railing. Sometimes the simple answers are the real ones. Sally turned toward him fully. Among my people, a life saved is a life claimed, unless a ritual is spoken. But tonight, you broke that rule. You saved me without claim, without demand, without expecting anything in return. That is not a story the deep tells. That is a story humans tell. Elias gave a small, warm smile. Saving someone should not require ownership. A soft breeze brushed past them, lifting a corner of Sally's blanket. She looked toward the coastline, then back at him. When I first opened my eyes, she said slowly, I believed you had violated something sacred. I believed you had taken something from me. Her voice softened, carrying a weight that had settled deep inside her. Now I realize you returned something I did not know I could lose. Elias waited, letting her find the words in her own time. Sally lifted her hand slightly, palm open, not touching him but close enough for the gesture to mean something more than distance. You gave me breath, she said. Not as a claim. As a choice. You gave it back to me freely. Elias felt the warmth of her words settle quietly in his chest. It was never mine to keep, he said gently. It was yours from the start. Sally's golden eye shimmered faintly, reflecting the last sliver of moonlight cresting the horizon. In my culture, she said, when someone offers breath without intention, the deep calls it an accidental bond. A thread born of chaos. But if both speak truth afterward, it becomes something else entirely. Elias tilted his head. What does it become? Sally took a slow, steady breath, the kind that carried meaning far beyond air. A chosen thread, she whispered. Not bound. Not claimed. Chosen. The hum of the vessel quieted to a low, steady thrum, as if even the engine understood this was not a moment to intrude upon. Elias stepped just an inch closer, enough to acknowledge her words without assuming anything more. If the thread is chosen, he said softly, then it is your choice, not mine. Sally looked at his face for a long, unbroken moment, studying something that went deeper than expression. Then, with a quiet calm that felt like the settling of a tide, she nodded once. It is my choice, she said. And tonight, I choose to honor the thread, not fear it. The shoreline lights reflected in her eyes, small and bright like emerging stars. She breathed in, slow and sure, the air no longer foreign, no longer uncertain, but completely her own. Elias Grant, she whispered, you gave me back my breath. But you also showed me something I never expected from a human. The wind carried her last words gently across the deck. You showed me mercy without price. And as the vessel glided toward the quiet coast, the silence between them was not empty, not fragile, but full, like a tide that had finally found where it belonged.